I want to invest in a different way. And my husband said, Walt, why don't you research it? We knew we wanted to stick with real estate. We just figured there's a better way to invest. And in that process, I discovered apartment syndication. And I have a faith testimony and then I have a real estate testimony. It's like literally clear as day, driving to the gym to work out, hearing Monique Holm, the first woman I ever heard on Bigger Pockets, talking about house hacking and apartment syndication. I'm like, this is everything I love. I get to support people. I still get to educate people. I still get, and I get to advocate for people. I get to help them make money, and I get to help people have a quality homes. Like, this is what my family has always said. This is everybody winning. And that is exactly what I want to do.
Have you ever wanted to get involved in real estate development, but didn't know where to begin? Do you think real estate development is only for the large hedge funds or major corporations, the big guys? Or have you done some development in the past and are looking to scale up? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then this podcast is for you. Welcome to the W.I.R.E.D Wealth and Real Estate Development Podcast. I am your host, Nick Smith. Get ready to have your mind blown and rewired as we discuss all aspects of creating wealth and real estate development. Good day, everyone. Welcome to the Wealth and Real Estate Development Podcast. I am your host, Nick Smith. This is the podcast where we talk all things wired, wealth in communities, wealth in families, and wealth in individuals. Definitely want to encourage you all, if you are listening to this via podcast or if you're watching this on YouTube, encourage you all to like, subscribe, comment. I definitely love hearing from you all, and I definitely appreciate all the support that we have gotten in this journey, because it definitely has been a journey. So I would just want to thank you all. I have a very special guest with me today, a young lady by the name of Julie Holly. We've known each other now for several years. We met during the pandemic, and Julie is actually the owner and founder of Three Keys Investments. She has an awesome podcast called Conscious Investor, and she is just an all-around great person, for sure, for sure. Julie specializes in raising capital for your real estate projects or for various real estate projects, and we're going to dig into some capital raising on this episode. Julie, how are you, my friend?
I am doing super great. It's always so much fun to actually be able to talk with you, and this time we get to see each other. It's not just,
Exactly.
Like a phone call or a text or something.
Exactly. Well, Julie, if you can, be so kind, give my listeners a brief synopsis version of who you are, where you're from, your background, and what you're up to these days.
Ooh, that's going to be hard. We will be brief. So
Okay.
I'm one of those people where God has God used an entire lifetime to really weave together this beautiful investing journey and taken a lot of heartache and turned it into really beautiful opportunity as well. So I house hacked when I was in my early 20s and started realizing like, oh my gosh, you can make money off of real estate, which I knew. I was third generation in real estate. I mean, dad and grandpa were in residential real estate sales and very successful, but I hadn't seen the investing side of it. And I'd always shied away from it. My parents had lost some money on some real estate investments and then steered clear. And so I was like, just dabbling into that house hacking when I needed that extra money, because I was a public school teacher at the time. It's like, wow, this is powerful. And just my husband and I made this commitment that we wanted to live a modest lifestyle. We wanted to serve the world powerfully. And let's just acquire, this portfolio of single family homes. We'll just live in them, rehab them. And then we as owners can decide. So even if somebody didn't look good on paper, we would be able to say, yes, we want to support you in maybe restabilizing your life for whatever reason that might be. Right. And then we had our second child and something happens. And I started to it just started to feel insecure and even though the reserves were there and things were fine, it was like, I don't think I like this 1-to-1 ratio. I want to invest in a different way. And my husband said, Walt, why don't you research it? We knew we wanted to stick with real estate. We just figured there's a better way to invest. And in that process, I discovered apartment syndication. And I have a faith testimony and then I have a real estate testimony. It's like literally clear as day, driving to the gym to work out, hearing Monique Calm, the first woman I ever heard on Bigger Pockets talking about house hacking and apartment syndication. I'm like, this is everything I love. I get to support people. I still get to educate people. I still get, and I get to advocate for people. I get to help them make money, and I get to help people have a quality homes. Like, this is what my family has always said. This is everybody winning. And that is exactly what I want to do. So I have not deviated from this path all these years later. Started out as a passive investor because I knew I wanted to support the investors. I wanted to support other passive investors. And I'm like, who's going to follow somebody who's never done it themselves? So I just said, you know what? You need to do all these things before you lead people down the path. You need to walk the path ahead. And so we did all sorts of things, rolling over self-directed funds, dabbling into the infinite banking space, investing passively, just so that I could speak to my own personal experience before, saying like, oh yeah, this works. So how would I know if I've never actually done it? So, and I've done all of this from the very small town, remote rural town in North Idaho on the Canadian border. So cute little town called Bonners Ferry. And that's how the podcast came about. Here I am realizing I want to do all of this. And everybody else, you included, friend, were able to go to meetup groups and see people in person. And it seemed easy. And yet I was working still as a public school teacher, and I'm landlocked. There's no way I can drive 2.5 hours one way to go to a meetup group and come back and then wake up and be an effective public school teacher. And so I just scratched my head. How can I be successful at this? How can I expand my network? And that's when I began podcasting, because when we really want something in life, we can find a solution. It's always there. There's a solution. We might not like it. I happen to like podcast. I love podcasting, but that's how I got into podcasting. And then that just opened up a floodgate of opportunities as I just stayed with it consistently. And it's been absolutely amazing.
Awesome. And Julie, I have to give you your flowers while you're on this show, because you were instrumental in helping me get this podcast going. I definitely picked your brain on several occasions, and you gave me some key insights, and they have been truly invaluable for sure. So I definitely want to publicly give my gratitude to you for helping out and sharing your wisdom with me, for sure. Before we even get into the nitty-gritty of raising capital, you went from a public school teacher to pretty much being an entrepreneur. I mean, that was the transition. What was that transition like? And what were some things you encountered during that transition that you did not foresee, that you weren't necessarily prepared for?
That's a great question. And I would say that I was more prepared for it than many people who are making this type of transition, because in my 20s, I transitioned out of public school education into real estate sales, and then back into public school education. Gotcha. And so I'd had this I come from a family of entrepreneurs. So that kind of mindset, the risk threshold that it requires, and that just inner, we're just going to keep doing this because this is the plan. When you get scared, like all of those feelings. So let's talk about feelings for a second, right? I had all of those feelings. One, I had the feeling of excitement and determination. I know I'm on the right path. I know this is where I need to go. And anyone who is an entrepreneur or is making a big transition also sees a flip side of that and knows that it gets really scary. It doesn't go off without a hitch. There's always going to be some potholes on the road that you hit that make you, maybe have to veer to the side, or maybe you hit it head on and have to change a flat tire. Something is going to happen that is going to want to derail you and test you and try you. Like, really, how bad do you want this? And those voices can come in. They come into everyone's head, even Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates and all of these, people who we see, who we think are super successful. They still have these things come through their head. But it's that training yourself, that internal training to say, okay, that was a setback, or that's a learning, or that's there. I can feel all those feelings, and maybe I'm scared, and maybe I'm frustrated, maybe I'm straight up terrified, but I'm going to keep a level head and I'm going to stay the course. Right. And so all of those feelings were there. I was really excited to make my transition from public ed into full-time real estate investing, and was so clear. And so having a deep level of clarity about where I was going and why I was doing it, the reason that I was going into real estate investing was so much bigger than myself. And it continues to be so much bigger than me that I can't imagine doing anything else. Unless God tells me to, I won't. But I can see that this is my unique ability to really contribute into lives in a powerful way. And it is a very unique way. Not everybody can do what I do. Not everyone can do the type of development projects that you do. And so when I look at it like that, many people can be successful public education teachers, right? They can be very successful in that environment and impact those lives. Fewer people can be successful as developers. Fewer people can be successful, walking that path of an entrepreneur. And so those of us who do have that inclination and do have that ability, I think we also have a greater responsibility to stay that course because society needs us.
Right. No, I 100% agree. In the era of social media, IG, Facebook, all those hashtags, entrepreneurship is, I would say, it's glamorized.
Totally.
It is viewed as the ultimate end all be all, but not everybody is meant to be an entrepreneur. That's just the reality of it. But that does not mean you can't still do something meaningful with your life and with your finances. 100%. You mentioned the word, or even I may have mentioned it, I'm not sure. Somebody mentioned it. The word syndication.
Yeah.
Because whether it's development, whether it's people wanting to buy fix and flips, or whether it's people wanting to purchase multifamily, I say this, and this is one of the pushes of my podcast. I really want to make commercial real estate accessible, because I think some people think commercial real estate is this big audacious thing where, it's a real estate purchase. It is different than buying a single family home. Buying a 50 unit apartment building is different than buying a single family home, but it's not so different that the average person can't see their way through it. But you mentioned the word syndication. For my listeners that may not be familiar with that term, and again, Julie nor I are attorneys. We're not accountants. We're not professionals in those realms. But from your perspective, what does the term syndication, what does that mean?
Yes. So let's face it, not everyone should be an entrepreneur, because not everyone should be an entrepreneur. And I would make a terrible, peace officer, right? Like there are certain things that I'm just not equipped to do in life, right? So we know if we can just accept that and say, I don't have to be all things, I can be one thing. As a syndicator, when we look at this syndication model, right? This is a huge fancy word that just simply means crowdfunding. That's the simplest way that we can put it, right? I always like to think of it as a pizza. And we've all had those experiences where we've gone out to dinner, maybe we've ordered pizza, back in college, and everybody chips in a few dollars and they all get, some pizza and everything. So we've all done this crowdfunding, we're pooling our money for a common purpose. And that's what syndication is. But the beauty of syndication, when we're talking about people, investors getting involved in these larger purchases of commercial real estate, which could be a broad variety of, types of real estate. When we're looking at that, now these investors get to come in and they get to be passive investors or limited partners, which means they don't have to deal with the day-to-day. You don't have to deal with the management or the oversight. In fact, in all reality, our limited partners have zero voting rights. All of the voting rights are held by the general partners. And as the general partners, the responsibility to effectively implement the business plan and to reach the projections that we offer our investors, that burden is on us. And I do view it as a burden. Like, and if you're investing, you want people to view it as a burden. Like, no, that should be that's mine to bear. And I need to make sure that this is being executed on. And so anyone can participate in a syndication. And there are lots of different types of nuances to the syndication, but it's really simple and anyone can get involved.
Gotcha. You mentioned the general partnership versus the limited partnership. Of course, the limited partners would be your passive investors, from a financial perspective. But on the general partnership side, that's where you have the active involvement, so you have people that, raise the funds, you have people that source the deals, you have people that analyze the deals, you have people that have to actually manage the deals. And
putting up money.
Exactly.
Capital.
Putting up the risk capital. That's very important. That's extremely important, especially in what we do as far as development. There's a lot of at-risk capital involved in development. But in those, there's typically not one person that embodies all of those qualities and assets on the general partnership side. How did you determine that the fundraising aspect of the general partnership side was where you wanted to focus?
I happen to have this crazy love of humans. And all I can say is that is a gift from God. I
wouldn't call it crazy.
I love people genuinely, and I'm very curious about people, and I love to support people. And so when I discovered syndication, I immediately knew that was the lane I wanted to do. I wanted to educate investors, I want to support investors, and I want to hold their hand, and I want to help them cross the finish line and make lots of money while doing good in the world. Like, I instantly knew that. I also know about myself that I don't like spreadsheets. I don't like being stuck behind a computer screen. I don't like crunching numbers. And so I immediately knew that acquisitions and asset management, while I know I can asset manage, and I know I can do these things, right? It wouldn't bring me joy. Mm-hmm. And it wouldn't bring me happiness. And I deeply believe Peter Drucker in his essay, Managing Oneself, and then Paul Graham reiterates it in an essay called How to Do Really Great Work. And it's echoed in a lot of other bodies of work where it just says, do what you love. And that was counterintuitive to me. But the more I have leaned into that and trusted that, it's like, yeah, I am created to do this thing and it works really well and it feels effortless. And so in the past, I used to think, oh my gosh, it feels effortless. And so I must not be, work's supposed to be hard and tedious. I'm not supposed to like it. So it was really, I had to recalibrate my mentality about work and say like, no, actually, I should do what I love. I should do what brings me joy. It comes easy for me, but it doesn't come easy for everybody.
Right.
And that's why on that general partnership, having a group of people, anywhere from, 2 to 6 people or whatever, right? Having a group of people, depending on the project, that know their lane, that know what their strengths are and can lean into that. That's what supports the investors. That's what creates basically, I'm not a good sports person, but like the Olympic level caliber, or that creates we can go to the Super Bowl because we have the right players that can execute on that high of a level.
Right. No, that's cool. And that is something I struggle. And I'll tell you, I struggle with that. When we were doing our morning meetups, you remember these back in 2020 during the height of the pandemic? We were doing these morning meetups. Julie actually made a post one day and was like, hey, I'm getting ready to start this morning accountability group. Anybody interested? And I responded, and we did it for several months. But it took me a while because I was trying to make myself like something that I didn't like. And, for me, buying stabilized assets, though that's cool. I mean, that's a good business model. Stabilized cash flow and assets, that's great, but that's not me. I would rather see paint dry than buying, I mean, that's just not me. I'll invest in them, but that's not me. On the active side, I enjoy seeing the process of turning dirt into something. I enjoy seeing the process of taking buildings that have been dilapidated for multiple years or sometimes decades and turning them into something. I enjoy seeing conversions. That's what I enjoy. So I had to figure that out mentally, and I encourage everybody to really sit down, figure out what you like to do. What are you wired to do? What are you wired to do? Just like Julie figured out she knew it. And then also, and Julie, you can expound on this. Do you think your background in education actually played a part or helped you in this kind of the fundraising side of the business?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I would say it's like the level of organization, the ability to present, the ability to communicate, to educate, all of those elements. And the beauty of all of life is that our past prepares us for, where we're headed. And so we can just, most of what we've done in the past has transferable skill sets to it that we can draw upon. And I was drawn into education because it was serving people and it was helping people. So so many crossovers between the two spaces that made them very, symbiotic.
Gotcha. No, that is 100% true and 100% agree for sure. So 3 Keys Investments. First of all, how did you come up with the name? What is the principles or the guiding light behind 3 Keys Investments?
Well, 3 is my absolute favorite number. I tongue-in-cheek say, but it actually means something to me. It goes towards my faith. 3 days was good enough for Jesus. It's got to be good enough for me.
Amen.
So I always look at, lots of 3s within my faith, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, Christ, things like that. Then I also look at, I'm 3rd generation in real estate. And so it's a gesture towards my dad and my grandfather, who are also very successful in their own elements in real estate. And so it's just pulling all of that together. Grandpa used to say, the key is, so that's where we got the keys. And if you're on YouTube, and here I should go up a little bit, you can see, maybe on my shirt better, but you can see there's a bird sitting on top of a bird cage. And like everything's very symbolic. The bird is on top of the cage because most people are living these caged lives. Most people are living trapped. And ultimately, there's freedom available for all people. And so we can have that freedom. Faith is my number one source of freedom. And then we get into financial freedom and personal freedom. And so I want everyone to be emancipated. I don't want anybody stuck in a cage, because the best parts of who we are need to be given to the world. And it contributes, just like you watching raw land turn into, some type of commercial real estate that serves a community. All of our lives, the world is raw land. And when we lean into, and we're not living a caged life of fear because we're scared of what are they going to say or how am I going to make money, when we step out of that fear and we start living into our greater purpose, we all get to see raw land turned into something, and it's magnificent. And so that's where 3 Keys Investments comes from.
Gotcha.
And you got more than you bargained for, didn't you, Nick?
It was just what I needed, just what we needed for sure. And at 3 Keys, you specialize in partnering passive investors with investments or various real estate projects. And yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, second part of your question that I totally skipped over. Yes, exactly. So we don't operate in the fund model at this time. I'm not seeing that on the horizon personally. We do syndicate all of our purchases, and we only save. There are so many beautiful ways to invest in commercial real estate, but our heart is we want to serve humans. And so we do that by investing in multifamily real estate, which is apartment buildings, as well as assisted living facilities.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Wow. Yeah, I did not know that you did the assisted living facilities. No, that is it's a huge need in our country.
Huge.
And I can say in our area, every assisted living facility that we have is generally full. They are generally full, and they're generally at capacity. And people that get in there don't generally leave anytime soon. I mean, unless their health deteriorates to the point where they have to or they transition. But no,
Mm.
that is very, very, very needed. What are, I'm just curious on this. What are some of the
Definitely.
differences in the model of assisted living versus your, apartment complexes? Because assisted living is something definitely I've been interested in, but I know it is it's a much different model than just an apartment.
It is. It's apartments, it's like if you buy an apartment, you can say like that's your 101 class, and then assisted living would be your upper level classes, right? Because there's so many more moving parts. I've only recently, been gotten involved with assisted living. I wanted that multifamily experience first, where it's a more stationary object. It's not as many moving pieces, easier to manage and to see what's going on with it, right? You buy a 100-unit apartment complex and you have, say, a property manager, on site. Maybe you have two of them, and maybe you have, two or three handymen or something. Like your staff at a 100-unit apartment complex is, less than 10.
Right.
You buy a 100-unit assisted living facility and you're going to have a staff of at least 75 people coming along board. And so I think that for me, looking at the multifamily space, it's a great way to get started, and it was a good way to learn how to run the business. How does this work? How do I evaluate the real estate? When we go into the transition into assisted living, now we have two moving parts. Not only are we evaluating the real estate, but we are also evaluating a business, and we're evaluating all of the collateral that comes with that business, including the entire staff and personnel. How qualified are they? Would we need to transition any of these people to a different part of the company? How is this going to work? How are we going to ensure we have dignified care for the residents? So it's definitely a lot more moving parts. You're buying, again, real estate and an operating business, and you're keeping everything going really well.
Gotcha. No, it's definitely, I can see that you got two different businesses really going at the same time.
Mhm.
The real estate side of it plus the actual operation. Same thing with a hotel. Hotel similar.
Yeah.
You have the actual management of the hotel plus the actual real estate. So no, that's definitely interesting. When we think about the investing space or investors, you place investors, and I'm sure not every investor that you have a conversation with is appropriate or
Right.
fits the investments that you're looking for. So I have a two-part question. First one is, how do you find your investors? And I mean, you don't have to get super granular, but on a high level, how do you find your investors? And then what do you look for in investors that makes you say, okay,
Mhm.
this would be a good investor for what we got going on
Mhm.
at Three Keys?
That is okay. Your second question is the most brilliant question. Most people don't ask that question, and I absolutely love it. How do we find investors? All of our investments and investors involved, there's a relationship. This
Gotcha.
is what I love about real estate, and the reason I'm in investor relations. Right? It's all about relationships, which you're really great at, by the way. Yeah. And so it's like being able to create relationships. And so my natural love of humans makes it really fairly easy for me to, like go into networking settings and get to know people. And so to just touch on some of those things in case, your listener is curious, like, yeah, I go to live events across the country intentionally. I choose them very selectively about what's the culture, who's attracted to this event. Are they the kind of people that I would want to come into my investments? And are they the kind of people I want to be around? Right. Like I want to be evaluating, like, where am I going? Because it's just like if we're going to go to a concert, we're going to choose a particular concert depending on our mood or our likes, and we want to go with birds of a feather. Okay, for example, recently I went to a Ryan Holiday and Robert Greene. They're both prolific authors, and drove over to Seattle because I just wanted to simply hear them. But I was also curious. I'm like, I happen to really like these books and their bodies of work. And those bodies of work are of a particular nature where I'm curious who it's going to attract. I was very, very curious about that. And would those people also be investors? So going back to something I touched on earlier, do what you love with your work, but do what you love in life, right? Provided it's helpful and moral and all of that, and so just putting the asterisks there. And so here I am pursuing something that I love and enjoy. And I actually met extraordinary people at that event, So then how would I know if they're qualified people or people I'd want in my investments? So now it's, okay, well, we could easily, I'm going to digress for a second and say, you could easily judge a book by a cover and say, oh, that person looks this way, and so they have money and they can invest with me. Or that person does not look that way, and there's no way. I don't look ever on the outside, and it's a good thing I don't, because I have investors of everything. If you line investors up, they're not all going to look alike at all. And they all are very strong investors. And so it's like really looking to who is the person behind this? Do they trust me, and do I trust them? If I don't feel that the investor trusts me and my company, well, let's continue some education and let's continue the conversations, because I have had some instances where I have intentionally, just not received an investor or two into an investment because I could tell they need more time to grow and learn so that they can have confidence. And if they come into this prematurely, I'm going to have a lot of phone calls and a lot of conversations, and that can be really disruptive to my day and my ability to execute on the things that I'm setting forth that I'm saying I'm going to do. And so I want to make sure that there is mutual trust. So on my side, do I trust that they understand this process? Do I trust that when it's time to take action and sign legal documents and wire funds, do I trust that they are going to take action and do that in a timely way? Do I think, and ultimately that's what it comes down to, is what's their knowledge and understanding? And with that knowledge, great, that's a checkbox. Now, do I trust them, and do they trust me? Those are the two most important things for us. The money part, obviously, there are minimum investments that come into play. Have we let some people in under that minimum because we believe in them as an investor? Yeah, every deal, there's probably one or two investors, because our goal is to support investors in taking their first or next step. Mm-hmm. And although we want to support our high net worth investors, we can support some of these investors that are just getting started and in getting onto that path to building their investment portfolio.
Gotcha. No, that is absolutely awesome. And money, if you talk to aspiring developers and aspiring even real estate investors, one of the biggest hangups that a lot of them have is access to money. Access to capital, being able to find the capital. You have investors of all walks of life. You have some people that have exited businesses or exited careers where they have had they've been able to build some capital, in the past, and they're able to put that to work. But then you have some people that are starting at complete ground zero, and they don't have the capital. But not having the capital should not keep you from getting into the game.
That's
for
right.
Sure. Because like Julie said, you never know, if you talk about enough what you do, you never know who you're talking to and who would be interested.
So, what's interesting is that in this conversation, and for some reason, I just think this will be a relevant, brief story. In my conversations with potential investors, it's really fascinating for me in that I was speaking with this woman, and she was wanting to convert some 401k money. And I'm saying 401k loosely as retirement money from a previous employer. She wanted to convert that into a self-directed, vehicle. And I started, instead of just saying like, oh yeah, do that, I asked more questions. I said, okay, well, how much money is in there? She told me the dollar amount. It was substantially below $100,000 minimum investment. It was substantially below a $50,000 investment and substantially below a $35,000 investment, just to give everybody an idea, right? And so she and I were talking, and I said, okay, that's how much that you've got there. how much, and we started looking at what the projections were for that, money, like for that investment that she has, right? She was doing really, really well. And it was growing and maturing in a really efficient way. And because I invest passively and I'm on the active side of investments, I was able to I shared with her some very specific numbers. I said, listen, this is what I personally see off of a particular $50,000 investment that I have as a limited partner. And let's compare that now to where you're at. And let's compare. And so we went down this rabbit hole. And so when we're looking at where do we get the money, sometimes we want to instantly go into retirement funds and self-direct them, but we have to look at what's taking place with those. And in all of the investing, it's not a one size fit all. It's not, this is the right path for me because I heard a guru say that. It's, well, actually, who's managing the money behind this? Am I confident that, that money is going to continue to grow and that it's not going to collapse? Like, we're not going to have an Enron situation, right? Like you're just looking at what is actually taking place with this so that you're investing in the wisest way possible.
Gotcha. No, that is wise words. I'll say that for sure. Definitely wise. Julie, we're coming up on a few times. Like I said, I know I have to let you go. We can talk forever, but we can't talk too long. So if I'm an investor, I have a development, I have a multifamily project that I'm trying to acquire, build, whatever the case may be. I want to work with a Julie, not necessarily you, Julie, but with a Julie or people that have, means or financial means or relationships with people that have financial means. What do you look for in projects, acquisitions, or even teams to make you say, this might be something good for me to get involved in? And what kind of sways you away from certain projects as well?
Ooh, spicy. I like it, Nick. So personally, I have a criteria that's unique to Three Keys Investments. We like to know our partners for a year. We like to break bread with our partners. And if at all possible, we like to do a one-off little nonsense type of project just to see where the chips land. There's no money involved. There are no investors involved. Maybe you create a podcast episode. Maybe you do something where you can see how people show up, how they communicate. But you need to, like, for me, those are the boxes that I like to check in advance. Now, after we've checked those boxes, I want to look at, what's the track record of the team at this time? Like, what kind of loans do they secure for their investments? I have particular loan criteria that I like. I don't like adjustable loans. Like, I've never been a fan of that. And so I don't have adjustable rate loans in the portfolio in any of the partnerships. It's like, no, we're not going down that path. And so making sure that the investment thesis and philosophy is deeply aligned so that we're not going to be butting heads along that path at all, ever. Those would be, I say, like the absolute top criteria that I am looking for. And then once I'm looking there for my company, since I know I'm investing in multifamily and assisted living, does it even fall into that buy box? If it doesn't fall into the buy box, like, hey, maybe I'll connect you up with a friend. If it falls into that buy box, now I'm going to look at, does that meet our minimum investment criteria? And so we say, if it's not a 16% IRR, if we're not achieving a 6% cash on cash, and if we're not coming close to doubling our investor capital over a 5-year hold period, then we're going to pass on that investment opportunity. So having someone in my position and working with a company such as mine, it's how clear are they about what they do? At the very least, there needs to be clarity around what is the investment criteria that we're looking for. People need to know what their buy box is. The reason is that you're attracting capital into your space. If people know that, okay, this is what you like to invest in, you're going to start attracting more of those investors into the beehive. And it's like, people are going to be happy about it. Like, okay, I know, Julie is investing in assisted living and I want to invest in assisted living and I know, like, and trust her. I'm going to make sure that I'm on her investor list, right? And so if they don't understand what my company invests in, or any company, there's confusion. Anytime there's confusion, the best choices usually are not, the best decisions usually are not made.
Right.
And I think you were asking on the flip side, like that's what I would be looking if I were on the operator. So I do run investor relations, and sometimes we do bring in other capital partners. So I am looking at what can they really raise? What can they really bring to the table? What and who are they character wise? Character is key in all of life, because you will hit, we said at the beginning, potholes, and you'll have to swerve and things, you'll get flat tires. Who is it that is also coming into this partnership, and what is the caliber of that person? And although they'll say, I can raise $1 million, like I said, I thought I was going to, my first raise, I thought it would be easy peasy, no big deal. I've got a great podcast. It's all this, it's all that. And I brought like $150,000 to the table. It's like, what can they really, truly, confidently bring? Because if we say as capital partners that we're going to bring a certain amount of money and we don't, we jeopardize everything for the investors and for the deal. It's not just like, oh, oops, sorry. It's not a pass-fail class in college. This is a real deal, and it could screw a lot of people up in a big way, including reputations with brokers. So,
no, good deal. No, I definitely appreciate that. So we end on this. You and I, we talked about this briefly prior to going live. Winston-Salem, you all have you're working with the team on a development, about approximately $30 million multifamily development in Winston-Salem. And you are part of the group that's kind of putting that together. Just curious how that process has gone. And I'm sure you guys have hit some potholes, as you stated, some hurdles. And, because I do believe you guys fully got it entitled and got the land and everything entitled at this point. So just curious how that process is going, and what have you learned about new construction that you didn't know prior to getting involved with this?
I got involved with this specifically because of who my partners were. You and I were their mutual friends of ours. And then we also have the developer, the builder, and the architect on the general partnership team. So it felt like if I want to get into developing, this feels like the safest way to protect my investors while learning. I don't want to cut my teeth without having strong guidance in place, right? It's been a steep learning curve, but it's been a good learning curve. And this again speaks to the power of knowing your partners, knowing them well, and knowing their character. Yes, we have hit potholes, we have had flat tires, and we've had, some smooth sailing parts. In all of it, everybody shows up with a strong attitude, solution oriented, and we work our way through it. And so that's powerful. Just listeners, so you're aware, we bought raw land and we rezoned it. We went through the entire process of entitling it and getting our engineering work done. And we, started doing some pre-work, pre-site work of abating a couple of wells and scrapping a couple of houses on that. We got to deal with, some neighbors that weren't so happy. We had a road closure that we had to wait on. That was the hardest. I think the two most challenging points were, one, waiting on the road closure, because we're just sitting waiting for the city to simply be at their monthly meeting to check the box and say like, yep, that's fine. And it kept getting tabled, which puts our timeline back. And so trying to find other things to move the project forward that were also not going to put capital at risk. It created a very interesting dynamic. Currently, we're working on, securing our construction loan. And that right now, the debt markets are tight. It's an interesting time to be, going after a construction loan. I believe that we have something solid that we are moving forward with, which is exciting. And this is a 506c offering. So if you're listening to this and you want to invest in this is a time. I'm like, oh my gosh, like anybody getting into this project at this time, they're going to catch all the upside of it, because we're at that point where we're ready to go horizontal and then vertical and lease it up. I know we're going to hit more turbulence along the way, not because I will it into existence, but that's just the nature of life. But I'm confident that we're going to have a strong outcome with all of it.
Awesome. Julie, my friend, it has been a pleasure. If my listeners want to reach out to you, get in touch with you, listen to your podcast, where can we find you?
Ooh, definitely. Pop over to LinkedIn, connect with Julie Holly, and go listen to the Conscious Investor podcast wherever you like to listen or watch on YouTube. Mindset Mondays and Thursdays, we always have an interview with an investing expert.
Awesome. Julie, once again, thank you so much for your time. It has truly been a pleasure. To my listeners, thank you all for listening. Again, this is another episode of the Wealth and Real Estate Development Podcast, better known as W.I.R.E.D. This is where we build wealthy communities, wealthy families, and wealthy individuals through real estate development. I am your host, Nick Smith, signing off once again. Let's go get wired up. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please share this content with someone else who would benefit from it. I'm looking forward to having you with me on the next episode. Now go out and create some wealth and real estate development.